Imagine a world without money. It sounds simple, perhaps even idyllic. But how would you get the things you need? Let's say you are a farmer who raises excellent chickens. You have more chickens than you can possibly eat. Your neighbor, a potter, makes wonderful clay pots and you need a new one for storing water. The solution seems easy enough. You trade one of your chickens for one of her pots. This system is called barter, the direct exchange of goods and services. For thousands of years, this was how humanity conducted its business. It was a personal and direct way of trading, built on community and immediate needs. However, this seemingly straightforward system has some serious flaws. What if the potter doesn't want a chicken today? Perhaps she already has a coop full of them. This is known as the double coincidence of wants. For a trade to happen, you must find someone who not only has what you want, but also wants what you have. This can be incredibly time-consuming and inefficient. You might have to wander through the entire village, chicken in tow, trying to find someone who needs a chicken and has something you desire in return. It's a logistical headache that severely limits the scale and complexity of trade. Furthermore, how do you decide what a fair trade is? Is one of your prize-winning plump chickens worth one large storage pot or two small drinking cups? What if you only need a small pot but the potter thinks it's only worth half a chicken? You can't exactly cut a live chicken in half. This is the problem of divisibility. Many goods, like livestock or tools, cannot be easily divided into smaller units to make a fair trade for less valuable items. This makes smaller, everyday transactions incredibly difficult. The entire system relies on rough estimates and a great deal of haggling, which can lead to disputes and unfair outcomes. The issue of storage also looms large. Let's say you are a fisherman. Your money is fish. You can't save up your wealth for the future because fish will rot. This is the problem of perishability. Wealth that can't be stored is wealth that can't be accumulated. This meant that people couldn't easily save for a rainy day, invest in a future project, or pass down significant wealth to their children. The limitations of barter kept economies small and local. People needed something better, a form of value that was desirable, divisible, and durable. The search for this new tool would change the course of human history forever. The solution to the problems of barter came in a form that was shiny, rare, and universally desired. People started using valuable objects as a medium of exchange. These were things that everyone agreed had value. In some cultures this meant cowrie shells, in others it was salt, beads, or even cattle. These items were a step up from simple barter. They were more durable and easier to carry than a flock of sheep. However, they still had their own problems. Salt could get damp, and shells could break. More importantly, their value could fluctuate wildly, depending on how easy they were to find. A new standard was needed. This is where precious metals, particularly gold and silver, entered the story. These metals had several distinct advantages that made them almost perfect for the job. Firstly, they were rare, which meant a small amount could be worth a great deal. You didn't need a cart to carry your wealth around, you could simply put it in a small pouch. Secondly, they were incredibly durable. Gold and silver do not rust or decay. A piece of gold buried for 1,000 years will emerge just as brilliant as the day it was lost. This meant wealth could finally be stored for long periods, allowing people to save and plan for the future. Beyond their durability, gold and silver were also easily divisible. You could cut a large bar of silver into smaller pieces to pay for something less valuable, solving the half-a-chicken problem once and for all. They could also be melted down and reformed into new shapes like bars, rings, or ingots. Crucially, their value was consistent. An ounce of gold in Egypt was worth the same as an ounce of gold in Mesopotamia. This created a universal standard of value that could connect distant trading partners and build trust between strangers, laying the groundwork for international trade on a scale never seen before. Of course, this system wasn't perfect either. How could you be sure that the lump of silver you were offered was pure? And how could you be certain of its exact weight without carrying a set of scales with you everywhere? A merchant might try to cheat an unsuspecting customer by mixing a cheaper metal with their silver, or by using inaccurate weights. Every single transaction required a careful process of weighing and testing the metal for purity. It was an improvement certainly, but it was still cumbersome. The next great innovation was needed to make trade faster, fairer, and more secure. That innovation would be the coin. The idea of using weighed pieces of metal for trade was already well established in the great civilizations of the ancient Near East. In Mesopotamia, merchants had been using standardized weights of silver, known as shekels, for centuries. These weren't coins as we know them, they were more like small, unmarked ingots or pieces of silver wire. When making a purchase, a merchant would place the silver on one side of a balance scale, and a set of certified stone weights on the other. This process, while functional, was slow and required trust in the merchant's scales. The system was crying out for a guarantee, a mark of authority that could vouch for both the weight and purity of the metal. This revolutionary step was taken around 650 BC in the kingdom of Lydia, located in what is now modern-day Turkey. The Lydians were the first to produce what we would recognize today as true coins. They took naturally occurring lumps of electrum, which is a mix of gold and silver found in local rivers, and stamped them with an official symbol. This symbol, often the head of a lion, was a guarantee from the Lydian king. It certified that the piece of metal was of a specific weight and purity. Suddenly, there was no need for scales or testing. The king's stamp was his promise. This invention was a game changer. It dramatically sped up transactions and made trade more accessible to ordinary people. A Lydian merchant could now quickly exchange goods for a handful of stamped coins, confident in their value. They didn't have to be a metallurgist to participate in the market. The concept was brilliantly simple. The authority of the state was now baked into the money itself. This built a new level of trust and standardization into the economy, allowing markets to grow larger and more complex. Lydia's invention was so successful that the idea spread like wildfire across the Greek world and beyond. The early Lydian coins were quite crude by later standards. They were often little more than misshapen lumps of metal with a simple punch mark on one side, but their impact was profound. They transformed trade from a slow, cautious process into a fast-paced exchange. For the first time, value was not just in the metal itself, but in the official stamp it carried. This linked economic power directly to political power. The rulers who controlled the minting of coins now controlled the very lifeblood of their economies, a power that kings and governments have held on to ever since. When the Persian Empire rose to dominate the Near East in the 6th century BC, its rulers quickly understood the power of Lydia's invention. The empire was vast, stretching from India to Egypt, and it needed a way to unify its diverse peoples and manage its enormous territory. Coinage was the perfect tool. The Persian kings, starting with Darius the Great, introduced a sophisticated and standardized currency system across their lands. This wasn't just about making trade easier, it was about stamping Persian authority onto every market transaction, from the grandest city to the smallest village. The Persians created two main types of coins that became famous throughout the ancient world, the gold daric and the silver siglos. The daric was a coin of exceptional purity, weighing about 8.4 grams, and it typically featured an image of the Persian king as a heroic archer. This coin was used for large-scale payments, such as funding military campaigns, paying tribute, or conducting international trade. The silver siglos was smaller, and used for more everyday transactions within the empire. By controlling the production of these coins, the Persian kings created a single economic zone across their vast and multicultural empire. This standardized currency had a transformative effect. A merchant traveling from Babylon to Sardis no longer had to worry about exchanging different forms of local money or weighing out raw silver. He could use Persian darics and sigloi everywhere, confident that their value would be recognized. This dramatically reduced the friction of trade and encouraged the movement of goods, ideas, and people across the empire. The image of the king on every coin was also a powerful form of propaganda, a constant reminder to everyone who used them of who was in charge. Money became a tool of imperial control. The Persian system also introduced the concept of a bimetallic standard, where the value of gold coins was fixed against the value of silver coins. One daric was typically worth 20 sigloi. This created a stable and predictable monetary system that fostered economic confidence. The Persians didn't invent coins, but they were the first to use them on a massive imperial scale. They demonstrated how a unified currency could be used not just to facilitate trade, but to build and maintain an empire, a lesson that would not be lost on the great powers that followed them. The Romans were masters of organization and engineering, and their approach to currency was no exception. As their republic expanded and later transformed into a mighty empire, they developed one of the most sophisticated and widespread monetary systems of the ancient world. For centuries, the Roman denarius, which was a small silver coin, served as the backbone of the Mediterranean economy. It was produced in enormous quantities and became a trusted form of payment from Britain all the way to Syria. The phrase "all roads lead to Rome" was true not just for travel but for trade as well, all of it powered by Roman silver. The Roman currency system was hierarchical, designed to make transactions of all sizes possible. At the top was the gold aureus, used for imperial payments, military salaries, and large-scale commerce. The workhorse of the economy was the silver denarius, the coin used to pay legionaries and to conduct most significant business. For the small, everyday purchases of the common people, there were bronze and copper coins like the sestertius and the aes. This meant that a citizen could buy a loaf of bread just as easily as a senator could purchase a country estate, all using the same official currency system. Like the Persians before them, the Romans understood the propaganda value of their coins. Every coin was, in a way, a miniature billboard for the emperor. The front, or obverse, almost always featured a portrait of the reigning emperor, projecting his power and authority into the hands of every citizen. The back, or reverse, was used to broadcast messages about his achievements. An emperor might commemorate a military victory, a new building project, or the prosperity of the empire. Coins became a vital tool for communicating with a largely illiterate population, reinforcing loyalty and celebrating the stability of Roman rule. However, the Roman currency system also had a dark side that serves as a cautionary tale. As the empire faced economic and political crises, successive emperors began to debase the coinage. They would recall old coins, melt them down, and reissue them with less silver, mixing it with cheaper metals like copper. This allowed them to mint more coins and pay their bills, but it, unfortunately, destroyed public confidence. People hoarded the older, purer coins, and rampant inflation took hold. The collapse of the currency's value was a major factor in the eventual decline and fall of the Western Roman Empire, demonstrating that a stable economy really relies on trustworthy money. While Lydia, Persia, and Rome were developing their stamped, precious metal coins, a parallel monetary revolution was taking place far to the east. In China, the path to coinage took a different route. Early Chinese currency evolved from the bronze tools and implements that were valued in their society, such as spades and knives. Over time, these functional items became smaller and more stylized, eventually transforming into symbolic shapes that were easier to carry and trade. This practical beginning would shape the nature of Chinese currency for over 2,000 years, creating a system that was distinct from its Western counterparts. The Great Unification of China under its first emperor, Qin Shi Huang, in 221 BC, led to the standardization of many things, including weights, measures, and crucially money. He abolished the various forms of local currency and introduced a single uniform coin for the entire empire, a round bronze coin with a square hole in the middle. This design was incredibly practical. The round shape represented heaven, while the square hole represented the earth. More importantly, the hole allowed the coins to be strung together in large quantities, usually in sets of 1,000, making them easy to count and transport for larger transactions. This basic design, the round coin with a square hole, proved so successful that it was adopted by the subsequent Han Dynasty and remained the standard form of Chinese currency until the early 20th century. The Han emperors mass-produced these bronze coins known as Wuzhu coins in state-controlled mints. Unlike the Roman system, which relied heavily on precious metals like gold and silver for its high-value currency, the Han economy was largely built upon this humble bronze coin. Its value was low, making it perfect for the daily transactions of a vast agricultural population, from buying rice in the market to paying local taxes. The Chinese system demonstrates a different philosophy of money. While Roman coins derived their value primarily from the precious metal they contained, the value of Chinese bronze coins was more fiat in nature. Their value was guaranteed not by their metal content, but by the authority of the state that issued them. The government controlled the supply and declared them to be legal tender. This reliance on a low-value, state-guaranteed token currency allowed the Han government to manage a huge and complex economy effectively. It was a sophisticated system that underscored the immense power and organizational capacity of the Chinese imperial state. The invention of coinage did more than just make shopping easier. It was a revolutionary force that reshaped societies from the ground up. One of the most significant impacts was on the growth of cities. With a reliable medium of exchange, urban centers could flourish as bustling hubs of trade and commerce. Markets became larger and more permanent. People could move to a city and find work for wages, confident that the money they earned could be used to buy food, lodging, and other necessities. This broke the direct link between people and the land, allowing for a new kind of urban life. Money also enabled rulers to undertake massive public works projects on an unprecedented scale. How do you build an aqueduct? a city wall, or a grand temple. You need to hire thousands of laborers, quarrymen, engineers, and artisans. Before coinage, paying such a workforce would have been a logistical nightmare, involving the distribution of vast quantities of food and goods. With money, an emperor could simply pay his workers in coin. This cash flowed from the state into the hands of the workers, who then spent it in the local markets, stimulating the economy and creating a cycle of growth. The professionalization of the military was another direct consequence of this monetary revolution. It allowed for the creation of large, standing armies. Empires like Rome paid their legionaries a regular salary in silver coins. This created a professional class of soldiers who were loyal to the state that paid them, rather than to a local warlord. This financial relationship was the bedrock of imperial power. The ability to mint coins was directly linked to the ability to raise and maintain an army, conquer new territories, and defend the empire's borders. Money was, quite literally, the sinew of war. Furthermore, coinage created new jobs and specialized professions that had never existed before. The economy became more complex than simple farming and crafting. Suddenly, there was a need for merchants, long-distance traders, money changers, and accountants. This specialization of labor made economies more efficient and productive. Cities became vibrant melting pots of different skills and trades, all interconnected by the flow of cash. In essence, money was the catalyst that allowed societies to move beyond subsistence living and build the complex, interconnected civilizations of the ancient world. With the widespread adoption of coinage, a new set of economic challenges and opportunities arose. Carrying large sums of money was risky. A merchant traveling a long road could be a target for bandits. Storing your life savings at home made you vulnerable to theft. This created a demand for a new kind of service, a safe place to store money and a way to move it without physically carrying it. This was the dawn of banking. In ancient Greece and Rome, temples, which were seen as sacred and secure places, often served as the first banks, holding deposits for wealthy citizens. These early financial institutions soon began to offer more sophisticated services. A merchant in Athens could deposit a sum of gold with a temple banker and receive a letter of credit. He could then travel to another city like Alexandria and present this letter to a corresponding banker to withdraw the same amount. This made long-distance trade infinitely safer and more efficient. These early bankers also began to engage in money lending. They would lend out the money that had been deposited with them, charging interest for the service. This provided the capital needed for new business ventures, helping to fuel economic expansion. At the same time, rulers and governments realized that controlling the money supply gave them immense power over society. The state held a monopoly on minting coins, deciding what the currency looked like, what it was made of, and how much of it was in circulation. This was a powerful tool for taxation. Instead of collecting taxes in the form of grain or livestock, which was cumbersome to collect and store, the state could demand payment in its own official coin. This forced everyone to participate in the cash economy and gave the government a steady, predictable stream of revenue to fund its activities. This control also gave rulers the ability to manipulate the economy for their own ends. They could devalue the currency by reducing its precious metal content to pay off debts, as many Roman emperors did. This often led to inflation and economic instability, showing that the power to create money was also the power to destroy its value. The relationship between the state and the money it issues became a central theme of economic history. The king and the banker, one controlling the supply and the other facilitating its flow, became two of the most powerful figures in this new monetized world. As we navigate our modern world of digital transactions, credit cards, and cryptocurrencies, it can be easy to forget that the fundamental principles of our financial system were forged thousands of years ago. The journey from barter to Bitcoin is a long one, but the echoes of the ancient world are everywhere. The core problems that ancient people sought to solve, portability, divisibility, durability, and trust, are the very same issues that drive financial innovation today. Our contactless payments and online banking are simply the latest answers to those age-old questions. The concept of standardization, pioneered by the Lydians and perfected by the Romans, is the bedrock of our global economy. When you use a pound, a dollar, or a euro, you are trusting in the same principle that a Roman merchant did with his denarius, that the currency is backed by a trusted authority and will be accepted by others. The images on our coins and banknotes, featuring national heroes, landmarks, or heads of state, continue the ancient tradition of using money as a form of propaganda, reinforcing national identity and broadcasting political authority with every transaction. Even the more complex aspects of our financial world have ancient roots. The invention of banking in Greece and Rome, with its deposit-taking and lending, laid the groundwork for our modern banking industry. The challenges of currency debasement and inflation that plagued the Roman Empire are still major concerns for modern governments and central banks. The struggle to maintain a stable and trustworthy currency is a constant battle, reminding us that public confidence is the most valuable ingredient in any monetary system, whether it is based on silver, paper, or digital code. Ultimately, the story of ancient money is the story of how humanity built trust. It is about how we created a shared language of value that allowed strangers to cooperate, cities to grow, and empires to be built. From the first stamped coins of Lydia to the global financial system of the 21st century, money has been a tool that connects us, empowers us, and shapes our societies. As we stand on the cusp of new financial revolutions, from digital currencies to decentralized finance, it is worth remembering the long journey that brought us here. The future of money is yet to be written, but it will undoubtedly be built upon the foundations laid in the ancient past.